Good evening and welcome to monthly update February 2024. What you just heard was a new instrument I've just discovered. It's these two small jam jars rubbing their bubbly sort of bases with these little tiny orbs together, and it creates quite a pleasant noise. I think I'm going to use it on some songs. Probably something for my more commercial stuff, you know, not really the experimental stuff. I've also discovered we own this tiny little jigsaw puzzle. I might do this. I don't even know if it's a real jigsaw puzzle, but the pieces do appear to be interconnected somehow, so I'm going to try that out and see if I can actually do it. Because it's a tiny little jigsaw, so it won't take up as much room as some other stuff might. But anyway, I hope everyone is doing good. I am. It's been I don't know about a super productive month, but a super consumative month. I've listened to a lot of albums that I've never listened to before. In fact, I may well have listened to more albums in 1 month than I've ever listened to before. No, I don't think I have, but I've certainly listened to a lot more than usual. But we start with things I've done. Now, I have released another single from Moid18, a young boy. I would have done a lot more of the album by now if I hadn't got my ear blocked. Because basically our shower's broken, and so I had to go in the bath, possibly for my first time in over a decade, and it was very nice. In fact, I think I may, once even the shower's fixed, I think I'm probably just going to have baths because it was very comfortable. But the thing is, when I was washing my hair, we have like this little attachment that goes onto the taps. And you can mix the hot and cold taps, and it's like a shower head attachment. And when I was doing that, it went into my ear, and I think it washed some wax that was around the outside in and blocked it. And it was blocked for over a week. And just over the last few days, it's suddenly come back, and now my ear's fine. And even though tomorrow I'm going to the doctor's to get it flushed, so instead of flushing it, I think I'm just going to ask them to have a look at it and see if it, you know, if it's alright. It may still need flushing because it is still a bit quiet, but it's not blocked, so I think I might have just done some damage, but I don't know. Anyway, so I can do more work on the album now that it's back to normal. I've also started work on the album that's coming out after that one, but you'll hear more about that one later. Think plans for next month. Work more on the album, work more on the gaming channel. I've been doing February so far it's been the first month where it's been sort of constant, my thing that I worked out. I worked it out during January, but like the first half it didn't really adhere to the plan now. So February is the first month where I've really been doing it properly. And it's already paying off because I've already gotten. I might as well go all the way. I've just gotten quite a few more subscribers on the gaming channel. There is a link in the description. There should be. Yeah, in the other stuff category, right at the bottom, 5th link up from the bottom, is the gaming channel. So there. On to things I've watched this month. I've been watching, I haven't listed these down, but I'm watching a bit more QI and a bit more Top Gear. Just in my spare time. Very fun, but I haven't watched any full seasons, which is why I haven't listed them down here. And also, because it's not really plot based, they're more like just comedy stuff, I don't really count it. My criteria for including stuff in the description is really just kind of whether I feel like including it or not. But something that I have included is the first 4 series of Lego Ninjago. These series in particular were broadcast between 2011 and 2015. Now I used to watch this show when it was first broadcast. I was a kid, and I stopped watching at some point during series 4. I can't remember why, because watching it back now, it seems fine. And I'm very much enjoying it. I'm going to continue with it next month. But I'm definitely, after finishing season 4, I'm definitely past wherever I left off, because pretty much everything that I remembered, all the tiny fragments of memories from this show, have all happened in the show. But I don't know why I stopped watching it. I think I might have just lost track of the plot or something, because it did get a bit convoluted during series 4, especially with all like the snake stuff. I'm not gonna say anything to spoil anyone who hasn't seen it, but it gets a bit strange. But I've enjoyed it a lot. It's a good show. It's what I enjoyed a lot when I was a kid, and I'm enjoying it a lot rewatching it now. The rewatch is done, and next week when I start season next week, well, it probably will be. In fact, it will probably be tonight when I continue on with series 5. It might not be tonight actually. I might finish season 4 of Top Gear, but I don't know. But anyway, it'll certainly be in March. I resume with series 5. I'll be on to entirely new stuff that I've never seen before. So there. Then on to things I've listened to this month. Now this is not including stuff that I've listened to for like the second time, because if we're counting that, we're also counting the Velvet Underground's first 2 albums, the Rolling Stones' everything from Aftermath to Let It Bleed, and the Residents' Santa Dog album. But this is just the stuff that I've listened to for the first time. This probably could have been done in a better order, but this is the order that I listened to them in. So I started out, I had a plan that I was going to review all 10 of Brian Eno's obscure records, which, for people who don't know, is Brian Eno had a record label from 1975 to 1978 that he released 10 albums on, only one of which was actually him, but he produced all of them, or was involved in the recording of all of them. The first of which to be released was this one, called The Sinking of the Titanic by Gavin Bryars. And that was the A side, and the B side was Jesus' Blood Never Failed Me Yet. Now, The Sinking of the Titanic, which is the first track, I enjoyed the bits. It's kind of essentially what it is. It's imagining what it sounded like as the band on the Titanic, because apparently the band continued playing as the ship sank. And it's meant to sound like what they were like as they were drowning, essentially. But it's the idea that they could like keep playing even underwater. And the bits where it goes under, because it mixes classical music and ambient music, because it has the acoustic instruments of classical music, but it has the electronic reverb of those instruments from the ambient music. And there'll be points where the acoustic instruments drop out of the mix and you're just left with the ambient stuff, the reverb. And I really like those bits, but the bits where it has the instruments, I don't fancy so much. What I did really like was the second track, Jesus' Blood Never Failed Me Yet, which is basically a loop of a homeless guy singing, and it gradually builds up with orchestral stuff over the course of the however long it is. Let me just check. Like 25 minutes or something. Well, that's 24. It's like, yeah, pretty much like 25 minutes each side, actually. That one was really good. I really liked that one. So there. I think I'm going to do these track by track, these albums, just for the hell of it. Next was the Velvet Underground's 1969 self-titled album. This was their first album after they kind of abandoned the experimental style of their first 2 albums. Now, as I said, I did re-listen to the first 2 albums before listening to this. I know when I first talked about those 2 albums on one of these monthly updates, I said I didn't really like the first album that much. That is different now. I knew it had changed, because often when I don't enjoy an album that much on the first listen, I will enjoy it a lot more. And I've actually re-listened to it twice this month. First, before I listened to this one, and again, even actually just yesterday, I listened to the first album again, and it is much better on re-listens than it was on my first listen. I pretty much like every song on it now, even the extreme ones, like even the Black Angels Death song. I very much enjoy even now. Which I didn't enjoy so much on the first listen. It's probably the worst song I'd ever heard, actually, on the first listen. White Like White Heat just gets better with every listen. Definitely, out of the 4, I've heard all of the 4 Lou Reed Velvet Underground albums. I know they did another one afterwards, which I will listen to, but I haven't gotten around to it yet. And out of those, White Like White Heat, which is their most experimental, also happens to be my favourite as well. So yeah. So I listened to those 2, and then I listened to this one. Now this one, because I'm guessing I think they was like struggling for money a little bit, and they needed to get out something a bit more commercial. Well, a lot more commercial actually. So this is like pretty much if you took like the 2 or 3 commercial songs from their first album, like like Sunday Morning and like the Nico songs, and just made an entire album of that sound, is pretty much what this is. If I had to, the 2 songs that are my favourites, like pretty much the whole of side 1 is pretty much normal stuff. Side 2 has Beginning to See the Light, and That's the Story of My Life. Those are my 2 favourite songs from this album. And it also has The Murder Mystery, which is the most experimental song on this album, and hints to some of the stuff they did on the first 2. But the music is still more commercial. Like the experimental bit of this song is that they have 2 vocal tracks going at the same time, each saying different things, which is quite like the kind of stuff they did on White Like White Heat. And also a notable thing is the drummer Maureen Tucker doing her only vocal appearance on any Velvet Underground song. She does backup vocals on Murder Mystery, and she might do some more on some others as well. But her only lead vocal on any Velvet Underground song, and her only lead vocal, from what I know, on anything until the 80s when she started releasing solo stuff, on the song After Hours, which is such a modern sounding song. I'd usually say that as an insult, but it's like it's so ahead of its time, because it's just her and the acoustic guitar, and it sounds like something some band would do now, but a better version of it, obviously, because it's from the 60s, so it's automatically superior. But it's a really nice song. It's like a very sweet. Apparently, I mean, it was written by Lou Reed, but he said that it was too innocent for him to sing, so he got her to sing it instead. But it's very nice. Apparently, she refused to ever do it live, I think. Although I think I've actually seen a live version, so that can't be true. But maybe that was someone else singing, because I've just seen it. I haven't actually listened to it. But I know that she was very nervous to do it, and she made everyone but her, Lou Reed, who was on guitar, and the guy on bass, I can't remember who he was. She made everyone else leave the room, and it was just the 3 of them to do it. But it's very nice, and I'm glad they convinced her to do it, because it's a very nice song. So yeah, sorry, I didn't recommend a song. If you're gonna listen to one of the 2 tracks on Sinking of the Titanic, Jesus Blood Never Failed Me Yet. If you're gonna listen to one song on the Velvet Underground's self-titled 1969 album, I would recommend Beginning to See the Light or After Hours, depending on if you want a slightly heavier thing. Beginning to See the Light isn't particularly heavy, but it's kind of Phil Spector heavy. You know, it's very present in the ears. It's not heavy rock, but it's like it's heavy pop, I suppose you could say. Or After Hours, which is very light pop. So if you want, those are the 2 best songs on the album, even though Story of My Life I actually prefer. But objectively, Beginning to See the Light and After Hours are the best. And After Hours is easily the most unique Velvet Underground song of any album, so if you just want a taste of something different, that one. But Beginning to See the Light is my favourite on the album. Then I got to a string of Rolling Stones albums. I've made a rule for myself now that I'm not going to listen to more than 3 albums by one artist a month. So if I've listened to 3 albums in a row, I have to move on and can't listen to that band again. Any new material for the rest of the month. Anyway, sorry, I've just seen something. Apparently someone doesn't know Flula is Flula. It says German guy confused by English insult. But they don't know who he is or something. I don't know, it might be a joke. Anyway, I'll watch that later. Next, the Rolling Stones' Sticky Fingers from 1971. I re-listened to all of their Aftermath to onwards stuff, pretty much. Before getting onto this one. This was their first album after the death of Brian Jones. He didn't really participate that much in their previous 2 either, but he was alive and on those records. This is the first album completely without him. And to fully feature Mick Taylor, which was his replacement. It is a good album. I have only listened to this once. I haven't re-listened to it. Because, honestly, I know this is like an iconic album, and the album cover is iconic, and it's just iconic and all that. I honestly did not enjoy this one that much. I know that's like a crime to say. But there's only like a couple of songs on it that I like that much. Like, Brown Sugar is great, and Wild Horses is great. The other ones, the rock songs on it, seem kind of forced. Like they're not really getting into a real jam that they're enjoying, like they did on like Midnight Rambler or something like that. They seem to be forcing themselves to do a jam. Especially on Can't You Hear Me Knocking, which goes for nearly 7.5 minutes, and it seems kind of forced. I'm sure I'll enjoy it on subsequent. Like I said, I didn't enjoy the Velvet Underground's first album on my first listen that much. I enjoyed a couple of songs. But now I enjoy pretty much every song. I'm sure after a few listens I'll probably enjoy every song on this as well. But just as a first reaction, it's really only Brown Sugar and Wild Horses that stand out to me, really. I mean, I know that obviously those are the 2 most famous songs, but I had not heard either of them before listening to this. I'd heard bits. I knew the chorus of both, because you just hear them everywhere, but I hadn't actually heard the full songs, either of them, until listening to this. But it's you can see why they chose those 2 as singles, because they definitely are the best of the bunch. But I'm sure it's a very good album. And it's also, along with the Velvet Underground's first album, it's also another interactive Andy Warhol album cover as well. Then we move on to the Rolling Stones' Exile on Main Street from 1972. This one I enjoyed a lot more because it's a double album of pretty much just the rock and roll stuff. There's none of the slow stuff. There's like a little bit towards the end, but it's mostly just rock and roll, rock and roll, rock and roll. So I enjoyed this one a lot more on the listen. I've really only revisited the first song, Rocks Off. It's literally the only song on the album out of all 18 that I've actually gone back and listened to since. But I did really enjoy it on the first listen. It's just kind of... It goes kind of through you. Like, you enjoy it, but it's like it's in one ear and out the other. But I imagine on subsequent listens I will pick out individual songs and appreciate them a lot more. Like in future ones of these, once I've listened to more albums, I go back and kind of do re-reviews of these like I did with the Velvet Underground just now. I'll enjoy a lot more of these songs, I imagine. But yeah. So, again, if I had to pick one song from Sticky Fingers, probably Wild Horses. If you like the slower stuff, if you like the faster stuff, Brown Sugar. Rocks Off from Exile on Main Street is the only song I would recommend visiting. I mean, it's the first song on the album. Just put on the album, and if you like the first song, just let it flow, you know. But it's a great song. I like that. Also, I believe it's the first song to feature the Rolling Stones using a certain word that begins with the letter F, which they only use it once in this song, but on their next album, there's a certain song where they use it, I think, about 80 times. But we'll get to that later. Well, we'll get to that right now, actually. That album, anyway. Goat's Head Soup. I listened to this immediately after listening to the last one, but I've re-listened to this one at least twice this month. This one I love. The album cover is amazing. In fact, we had this CD in the car when I was younger, and I always thought it was a woman on the cover, and I've only just this month found out that it's actually Mick Jagger. He's wearing lipstick, though, and he has a veil. It's not my fault. But there's so many great songs on this. 100 Years Ago, Angie, Silver Train, Star Star, which is the one where they use that word. Star Star was not the original title. It was originally called Star F. But pretty much every song on this is great. Those were just the outstanding tracks. 100 Years Ago, Angie, Silver Train, and Star Star. If I had to recommend one song, I can't recommend one song. I have to recommend two. Star Star, obviously, and 100 Years Ago. Those are the best ones. Great album, brilliant album cover. Probably my favourite Rolling Stones album cover, actually. Out of all the ones I've seen so far. I mean, I love the Satanic Majesty's Request album cover. And I love the Let It Bleed album cover. But this, I think, outdoes them both. It's a great colour, the orangey, yellow looking colour. And I just really like it. So that's that. That is Rolling Stones' Goat's Head Soup. Then I do another Velvet Underground album. This is Loaded from 1970. The final album to feature Lou Reed. It was also their first without Maureen Tucker. She was still in the band, but she wasn't. She was pregnant and she was busy, like, giving birth and stuff to participate in the recording. So she left the band shortly after this album was released. But even though she was still technically in the band, she isn't on this album. So it is the first album without her. It is still really good though, as much as I like her, and she did that great vocal. But this album is also fantastic, I think. It's more in the commercial vein of the Velvet Underground than it is their first two albums, but it has a bit more experimental stuff on it, particularly on the song Train Round the Bend. There's this really harsh, pulsating kind of white noise, like, because it's about a train, and so they do like a train noise. It's not really like that. It's kind of an electronic. I think it's done with a guitar, with like a lot of distortion, and then a really sharp tremolo. It's like a square wave tremolo. I think that's how they did it, but it's really harsh. Which, because considering that they're in their more, I mean, this song would fit a lot better on, as much, I mean, I'm not insulting this album, I'm not saying I don't want it on this album, but I'm saying it's much more similar to the music on White Light, White Heat than it is to the music on this album. So there's that song, but my favourite song on this album is Head Held High, which is like a kind of a rock and roll. I've just been in a rock and roll mood, I suppose. It's not particularly experimental, but it's rock and roll, you know? For the more softer songs, Who Loves the Sun is a really nice one. And Oh Sweet Nothing, which is the final song, so the first and last are also very good. But again, if I had to recommend only two songs from this album, it'd be Head Held High, and Train Round the Bend would be the two to recommend. But this was also their first to feature Doug Yule as a vocalist. He was on the Velvet Underground, self-titled as well. But he was just a band member. He didn't do vocals, or he didn't do lead vocals anyway. He might have done background vocals. Or co-lead vocals, I think, on the or whatever that one was called. I can't remember what it was called. Murder Mystery. But this is the first where he does lead vocals. And of course, for the following album, he took over entire lead vocals, and he did the entire lead vocals on the next album, but I haven't gotten around to that yet. I'm sure it's good, because I enjoy songs on this one. So I'm moving about so much, I was just scratching my earness, if you must know. But yeah, 2 songs from this I'd recommend: Head Held High and Train Round the Bend, if you want one of the Doug Yule's ones, Who Loves the Sun. That is that. Then I've listened to some more of The Residents, because I was in a more experimental mood. I listened to, after listening to The Loaded, I listened to a couple of Frank Zappa albums. I re-listened to Uncle Meat and Burnt Weenie Sandwich, which both have still, I think now, and I think I said this at the time, the best album covers I've ever seen. Those 2 albums. Probably better than the music that's on them, actually, as much as I do like the music that's on them. But they were very good. I was intending to carry on with Frank Zappa. I was planning on doing, what's the next one called? Chunga's Revenge. That's the earliest one that I haven't listened to yet. I was planning on doing that, but I just wasn't in the mood for his style. He's not very consistent, and I think I wanted something a bit more consistent. And from what I'd heard of their EP, Santa Dog, they have a very consistent experimental sound, which was really what I was into at the time. So I've listened to The Residents' first 3 full-length albums. The first of which is Meet the Residents from 1974. Great album cover. The Beatles parody. As much as I like the Beatles, obviously. Very experimental. I've liked it very much. It's kind of difficult to recommend songs from it. Because they're all very short and kind of blur into each other. If I had to remember, I think Infant Tango I enjoyed quite a bit. Whatever. I enjoyed Infant Tango quite a bit. Sounds a bit iffy, but the title. But it's a good song from what I remember. If you're in a mood for something more experimental, that's that. Then I listened to their follow-up album to that from 1976, which has the best title for any album I've ever heard in my life. And it is called The Third Reich and Roll. That is the best title of any album in history. It has 2 songs. Swastikas on Parade and Hitler Was a Vegetarian. Which I got, that's what they called them. This is their rock and roll covers album. From what I understand, I could be wrong about this, but I think I read this somewhere. They made it by having all the songs that they wanted to cover on the tape track, and then they recorded bits over the top of them, and then removed the original to just leave the bits over the top. And that wouldn't surprise me based on how this sounds. Now, both the songs, as far as how accessible they are, if I had to give them a number out of 10, a rating out of 10 of how accessible, they're both a 0. But that's not a quality thing, that's just an accessibility. Like how likely they are to be played on the radio. I mean, the shortest one is 17.5, and longest one is 18.5, so it's not likely either of them are going to get played. But based on the songs that they actually cover, the second one, Hitler Was a Vegetarian, is actually the one I preferred out of the 2, because that had a Beatles song and a Rolling Stones song on it. As a kind of medley. Actually, they did Hey Jude Into Sympathy for the Devil at the very end. But it's good. It's good. I've been in a more experimental mood, so it really fits. Their next album, Fingerprints from 1977. Now, this album cover that's used on the YouTube version is not the original album cover, and from what I've seen, I think I prefer that one to this one. But whatever. Now, out of this album, I think the ones I liked especially was God Song. I liked God Song and You Yes 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 Again, which is a kind of reprise of the first song, which was called You, Yes, Yes, Yes. But I prefer the reprise to the original. So there's that. And there's not really much to say about it. It's just, I enjoyed it. So there. And then to cap off the month, I've done a Billy Joel album. His very first album from 1971, Cold Spring Harbor. This had... I didn't think I'd know a single song from it. But I did know She's Got Away, which is the first track. It's not that version, though. The version I know is the live version that's included in, like, the compilations. That seems to be considered the official, like, definitive version of the song. But the original is still just as good, and this is a great album. And it amazes me that he wasn't immediately famous. Because there is not a slight drop in quality. I mean, it's not a drop in quality because this is earlier. But assuming he released this album... Say, imagine this album was his follow-up to The Stranger. This would have been just as much of a hit. The only reason it wasn't is because he wasn't famous yet. This is just as good of an album as The Stranger, in my opinion. The album cover doesn't really suit the music. It's a very grainy black and white picture of him with a mustache. And it looks like a heavy metal, like it looks like a Black Sabbath album cover. It does not fit the music. It's a good album cover, but it's just on the wrong album. But it is a good album. But yeah, I don't really have anything else to say. It's just a good album. Like, it's, if you like the singer-songwriter genre, if you like someone expressing themselves through their words rather than just the music, if you like lyrically focused music, because for me in music it's mostly about the actual music, and the lyrics can take them or leave them. Good lyrics are great, but for me a song doesn't need great lyrics to be a great song. It's just if the music is great. But Billy Joel has it all. Probably the greatest lyricist ever, I'd say. Maybe that's going a bit far, I don't know. I mean, Stevie Nicks is also brilliant. I mean, if we split it, you know, we can have Billy Joel, the greatest male songwriter of all time, and Stevie Nicks, the greatest female songwriter of all time. Difference is Billy Joel can play an instrument. Stevie Nicks can only play the tambourine. I mean, I'm crap at instruments as well. I mean, if she picked up a guitar, she'd probably be more proficient with it than I am. And I think she actually can play piano, I think. So, you know, ignore me. But this was a very good album. A great album to start his career with, and a great album for me to finish the month with. If I had to recommend 1-2 songs, She's Got Away. And what else? I can't really remember any of the others, to be honest. But I remember I enjoyed pretty much all of them. I remember Tomorrow Is Today being quite nice. Apparently that's him singing about thinking of killing himself. So a lovely happy time for all. But it's a great album. So there. That is all, I think. I'd answer questions, but there are none. So I hope you guys, peoples, have enjoyed this. I hope you listened to some of the stuff. If I had to recommend one album that I've listened to this month, oh, it's not easy. I think it'd probably have to be the Rolling Stones' Goat's Head Soup. Yeah. Either Rolling Stones' Goat's Head Soup or Velvet Underground's Loaded. Those are the two I'd recommend. If I can only listen to one, I'd go with Goat's Head Soup. Probably my favourite Rolling Stones album now, I'd say. But they're all great albums. All the ones I've listened to this month have all been great. I only listen to great music. So yeah, I hope you've all had a good February. I hope you all have a good March. and I'll see you all actually tomorrow on the gaming channel, because there'll be a video going up at 4 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time as usual. It will be it will be Outlast 2 Part 2. I've already recorded it. Obviously, I recorded it on the same day I recorded the first one, but you haven't seen it yet, and you'll be seeing it tomorrow. And but I'll see you probably live on one of the Sundays or Saturdays in the following month, depending on when I feel like doing it. I hope you enjoyed. Please like this live stream. No one ever says that. I don't like live stream. Just have a good life. Goodbye. I'm gonna play you out with some more of these.